Hello, everybody. Welcome to Outlawed Thoughts episode 82. I think. I actually didn't verify that before I put that number there, so I might be wrong this time. Normally I check, but I'm pretty sure it's 82. Anyway, we're here with Tyler Janke. I've had you on here a few times, so you're sort
Right.
of I think you're the most returning guest
Wow.
out of everybody. I
Shocking.
think.
And especially after the last time where it caused a whole brouhaha. I don't know if it broke up you and
Oh, that
Kareem,
is true. Shit, I didn't even think about that. No, Kareem will be back on. I just
all right.
typically for these kind of things, he's out of the loop on all this anyway, so it'd be like having to clue a third person in was weird, but yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, you were here when you kicked off me getting called all kinds of things on Twitter. That was
Did you guys make up? I know there was a stream after the fact. You kind of did a breakdown. I didn't listen.
Oh,
I'm
I
sorry. I was
actually
going to listen to it all, and I didn't because it frustrated me.
I actually saw Kareem at convention. So I got to see him there and sort of talk and chat about it. He actually met Toad and a few other people while he was there. And I did talk to one of the people who was on that stream in the chat. That Rose, remember the Rose person
Yeah.
that was in the chat? I met them and talked to them, and that was a misunderstanding with them. They are like a person who's like active. I just didn't know who they were, and they didn't know who I was. So,
So the
but the
Rose,
rest of them can get fucked.
right? The Rose. I think I was watching the stream, and they, I don't know.
She.
She, okay, because you keep saying they, them, so I didn't know maybe that's where we're going on now. She seemed fine. I mean, I was like, there might be a misunderstanding
Yeah.
because who do you don't just get to come on someone's chat and start blasting them and then expect them to just be like, oh yeah, let me send you a link. It's like, I don't know who you are. And so, but I thought she was actually the most reasonable. No one else was. And I'm not
No.
going to get into it, but if you're on stream and someone is talking about your buddy, maybe you just defend them. That's all I'm saying for Cream. Maybe just
And that
defend
was sort of the sort of take I gave Kareem too, because my position's always been like, if somebody was doing that on a show with me, I'd certainly say, hey, I've had good interactions with this guy. I fucking made a show with him for some time.
With
So
that said-
there was definitely.
With that said, he was bashing Toad, and I joined in on bashing Toad. So what do you think?
Yeah.
But I will say, Toad's my guy. All those guys have been great to me. I love them all, and I do have their back. But when someone's gonna do this, you're gonna do comedy, and you're gonna bash them in general. So anyway, that's where we're at. Cream, we're good. Too.
And yeah. Yes. Yeah, and it's no, he'll be on a show here soon. I'm gonna do a big panel show here soon and get all the people back together for a like sort of post convention chat.
Yeah.
And maybe talk a bit about this weird stuff. I don't know if you saw Colorado, a few other states now have come out and said they're not going to nominate the candidate for the ballot. So that's interesting. Gonna see how that progresses, but and so I'll probably talk a bit about that. But I thought it would be good to have you on today because I've been watching you on your channel, Libertarian Podcast Review, which everybody should go subscribe to and go check out. But I've been watching you on there cover the Ricada situation.
Yeah.
And I've been watching other people cover it as well. I've been sort of, because here's the thing. I haven't put out any statements on the whole thing or put out any stuff on it.
The official
And there's a
Leighton,
few.
for district. You're running for public office.
Oh,
and
that's-
I needed a public statement on Ricada. Yeah.
No, but I do feel like I've had so many DMs, people in group chats and stuff being like, hey, I know you're like
Yeah.
somebody who's in his chat and like watches his stuff. Like, what's up? And so, yeah, I've talked about before, like privately with people, like, there's some problems over there in that environment. And I did sort of see some of this coming. I didn't see the Aaron Immolite, that whole stuff mixed in. I didn't see that one coming. That was the curveball for me. But now that it's sort of progressed into where you have an actual court thing, you've got charges, you've got all this stuff, you've got kids now in the fray, which is something you've been certainly putting an emphasis on, which I appreciate over there on your channel, because you obviously practice a family law, so you're sort of environmentally, you see a lot of this stuff, so you're going to have a little bit more knowledge about that. And I'm sort of knowledgeable about it from the opposite side, because I came from a bit of we'll say what I would view most people would probably look at as a backwards upbringing, and something that would probably have been criminal in a few ways. But
let me ask you this: backwards or dysfunctional?
Oh, definitely dysfunctional. So okay. Yeah, and I'll get into some of that, because I think that's some of the stuff I can add to the conversation here that's at least somewhat interesting, is point of view from some, like, some of the kids' point of view and stuff. I have a big family, so I had 4 brothers and stuff like that. But yeah, I have two of my siblings both went through the system, so to say, as far as
gotcha.
That stuff goes. And that was all tied to the fact that my mother, who's I don't have any contact with really, other than some calls every now and then, but my mother had like really bad mental issues. And so, but on top of that, like growing up, technically speaking, the way that we grew up was not copacetic, I'm sure, from a child services point of view. We didn't have, hot running water. We didn't have those things, So there's certain things that, like, in the case I saw being brought up, that I think I definitely took note of, like the kids being dirty and those things, which I pick up on a little bit more of when I'm seeing it, because as somebody who came from a household that didn't have those things, I was sometimes that kid, like, just it's gonna happen.
And
but
by the way, there's always context to everybody in certain situations,
right?
And let's say you live out in the country, or this is just your normal, and that's I made that emphasis today, which is because I did another one today, which is this is a change in the situation. They're seeing a change. This isn't a family that's been this way. We had friends, I went to small country schools. You had friends in situations that were just this way, and if I knew teachers that saw if it got worse, they were then concerned. That's the standard. So, we
right.
talked about bathing, and do you do this? Okay, maybe you didn't have a shower, maybe you didn't have running water. Okay, well then there's your situations, and maybe that's not the best, but where are you going to go? But if you have all these things and you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then your kids
you don't have the same excuse.
Kids are complaining, and the kids said that to the police officer. I'm sorry to break into here, but yeah, keep going.
No, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. You don't get, and I was getting there, but you don't get the excuse that we had. We lived rurally in the woods in Alaska, a bit of a different environment. And the truth is, like, it wasn't like we didn't bathe. We went, there was a general store in the town that we lived in that had shower units. So that's how we all took showers. That was the system. And so that was just how you lived. But and we weren't the only people in the community. But there was also the fact that we were homeschooled. So I spent all of my time at the house. So, there's things like that. We were also a family of 7 living in a small place. This is 500 square feet. Yeah. So, when people were talking about things like the messes and how messy the house was, people were sort of going, well, they have all these kids and this, and it's like, yeah, but they also have a lot of square footage.
Do you know how
and
much?
As somebody, I think it was over 3,000. It was something insane.
It was 5,000.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's
That's
insane.
A huge house, no matter how you
The apartment, the 2-bedroom apartment I'm in is probably roughly like 800 square feet.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like a massive space.
By the way, it could have been less than that, but yeah, it was like 3,000 to 5,000. It was when you read it, everyone that's doing, they're like, oh, big house. So
yes, it is big, and I'm sure they could be including a basement or something that's not used or whatever in there. But regardless, it's a big place. And so when I'm seeing the type of mess that's being talked about, the stuff that's going on there, I'm like, no, this is somebody who spiraled. And I think that's pretty clear, and that makes sense for the reports that came in, and some of the stuff that was going on stream, I think, sort of points in that direction as well. I do think some people have some notions that they're knowledgeable about drug use stuff, that stuff. I think I might have some bit different takes there. For instance, like, from my understanding, the drugs were found in the safe, locked up. Like, there was drugs found in the...
Yes and no.
So there were drugs outside the safe, but the 25 there was a bigger portion of drugs that were found in the
so
safe.
There was another, but by the way, that was, and they weighed it because I think the limit is like 25 ounces and then it goes above. So they
25
said there
grams.
were some on the nightstand. They tested positive for coke on the nightstand with credit cards, and multiple things there. And then it had packaging there and it said without packaging. And then the one in the safe, they found with they weighed it with packaging. So there was in both places. And
right.
Okay. Sorry. Keep going.
So that's another, well, no, it's interesting because I've read that stuff because, okay, so again, another thing I have sort of experience with, I've dealt with charges relating to drug stuff, relating to marijuana, but still possession with intent to distribute, I believe was the exact charge. Now, I beat these charges because the DA dropped them because I said, no, I'm going to go to trial because I knew I'd win. And the reason I knew I'd won was because the stuff that they claimed was mine wasn't. And it later came out in evidence that the person who did own the stuff had left his father's business card in the container. And it was like, oh, you really just fucked yourself because you literally left a calling card. So my lawyer and me were pretty confident. You know, it was like, yeah, this guy fucked himself.
Similarly, sorry. Ricada goes out and talks to the cops and says, oh no, the bedroom, that's just me and my wife. That's where we are. Because there was the Imholt chick. And so he was trying to say something. So one, talk to the cops, shouldn't have done that. But immediately he puts in there, that's his dwelling. Now you have what's called constructive possession. Okay. You may not have had it on your body, but that is the only place. You just told the cops, this is the only place that's my dwelling. I have possession over that. Imholt chick doesn't, my kids don't. Okay. Well, we found everything in your room. So now you can't blame it on her. Okay. You can't blame it on the kids as an example. And if it is the kids and you're doing coke in there, anyway, so there's all kinds of problems with that part as well.
Well, I think some people have said on the internet that he may have been saying that to the cops to try to get the Imholt chick sort of out of the situation, which to me is like, don't talk to the cops, just say nothing, and then whatever the Imholt chicks tells them is what they're going to have to go by. So it's like, and if she doesn't say anything, then they have nothing to go by. She's not on a lease. She's not supposed to be there theoretically. Of course, now that people said she's a live-in nanny, so they kind of fucked that.
No, people didn't. His wife did. He said she didn't live wife. There, and then the wife, they talked to the wife, and she did say she's not talking to the cops when they arrested her. And then in the jailhouse, they're like, "Oh, we need something or other. Who's the nanny? Can we call the nanny?" And she's like, "Well, actually, Imholt's the live-in nanny." And he just so you've already got problems. And by the way, it almost sounds like he's fucking his wife over. Physically.
Oh, it kind of sounds that way. And when I read the stuff, I know he said in his stream that he did like an 1.5 hour long stream on Locals, and he said on there that was a recording issue, that like the people at the like didn't record something properly, and so he had to go back in and then it'll be changed or something, but I don't know what the reality there is. It sounded weird. I see Baki in the chat. I mean, I wouldn't mind having cocaine legalized. It's just a contender in crack and meth, but combining cocaine and ketamine sounds worse. Yeah, so like the drug stuff. Might like the reality is like he was obviously doing drugs frequently with what was found in the house. I noticed you actually mentioned something about a 22 shell and stuff and using and stuff. And that was the first thing my brain came to as well, which I thought was interesting. Most people didn't pick that up. But it also could just be a spent shell or something, who fucking knows.
And by the way, I will say this, and libertarian that we are, or lean here or whatever, constitutional conservative type of people that might be tuning in as well. I'm not a fan. If it's just a drug charge, I'm saying this is just bullshit. One, it's just, why are you wasting your time doing that? He's on stream. If it's just a gun thing, I'm like, that is so ridiculous. Maybe he gets off on the new Supreme Court rulings, but maybe not. Bruin, maybe not. However, the kids thing is the problem to me. And that is where it really rings true. And from what I do, and I've mentioned this on the stream, which is my wife's ex-husband, drug problems. and we had to basically cut him off, and he just doesn't. We haven't seen him in years. His parents, the grandparents, they had a relationship with the kids. They could still have a relationship with the kids, but they said, oh, well, if he doesn't get to see him, and by the way, that's his own choice, then we aren't going to see him. And it's like, what pieces of trash that this is the case. My point on this is you're getting around kids. That's the problem. The kids are complaining. Libertarian society, I'm all about shame and of being able to coerce and to be able to, what are you going to do, right? Drug charges or issues you have around the kids. This seems like a problem to me. I don't have a problem with the government necessarily. That's where we are coming in, saving kids. CPS and those kind of things, they can ruin families. They can save families. I don't know what they're doing here, but everything looks bad. And if you saw that one video of him right before this all happened, you knew that there was a problem. And
yeah,
I stopped watching him for the last several months because he just seems out of control.
So I had stopped watching about 2-3 months before shit really hit the fan, and then I started seeing clips on Twitter and everything of that night and went, oh shit. And then the arrested stuff dropped, and I went, oh, okay, shit's like hit the fan. This is a kind of game over.
Why did you stop
and
watching?
Yes. So to be honest with you, he stopped covering really court stuff. He started just sort of, a lot of his streams, and this is a tendency with all of his drinking streams, would ultimately just become him rambling. And I like some of that stuff, but I also like the legal, analysis parts of the shows that I watch. So that sort of dropped off. And listen, as much as people talk shit about the guy's legal analysis, when he's cued in and he's keyed in and he's on his shit, he's good at the stuff. And he's good at breaking down the topics, what he's specifically good at. And the reason I came to like his content early on was because he had the sense of humor and he had that stuff. He's able to break these things down and give a legitimate, funny outlook on it. And I do enjoy that, and, getting a little bit of the analysis at the same time of getting the humor. But I think his big problem was, and I think a lot of this, and I'm sure he's going to talk about this soon, or not soon, but eventually after all this shit's over. But I'd love to know when this started, because I think, and this is my perception of it, with the amount of stuff that was there, with what was going on, this isn't something that developed a couple months ago. This is probably something that's been going on for a while. My guess is probably as long as the Johnny Depp trial. And I've said that to somebody recently in a group chat, and they sort of agreed with me that is sort of, because that was right around the time he was having to wake up early every day. He's having to deal with the stuff he was doing, and he's going and doing this, and people started noticing sort of changes in his aneurysms and moods right around after that trial. And so I think maybe that was as a result of him sort of continuing the same habit without the same energy output, and that's starting to show more effect. Because the truth is, I know guys, for instance, who live in cities that have done coke for probably 10-15 years, and you wouldn't even really know it, and they're going out and partying and doing it at least 3-4 nights a week, and people don't know. And the truth is, those guys will probably drop dead 30-40 years earlier than they should. But the reality of the situation is that if you're outputting a certain amount of energy and you're taking that drug, you can keep it up for a long time before anybody really knows. But most people don't do that. And he's fucking staying on a live stream sedentary. You're certainly not expelling any of the reason you're doing the coke isn't going anywhere.
Well, and not only that, he's documented himself in these states of getting high and coming down. And then, as the cop said, and I tend to believe it's probably true, this guy seemed to, the one that wrote the warrant there, seems to have a lot of experience. So, he's doing poly. He's doing multiple drugs, right? And then the drinking. So there's all these states. I tend to think you're right, too. And I'm totally, this is just gossip. This is girls' gossip hour, right?
Yeah, you can't know. That's why I'm just sort of throwing it out there.
Right. And I do like to stick to kind of some of the legal stuff, but I'm with you. What I liked about Nick, you're watching a trial. Now, everyone, it's basically what it is. It's enjoying law school in a way. And it's kind of a mix, which is their commentary is a lot about almost theory. Then he gets guys on there that do practice a lot, and they're like, hey, here's how you kind of do this and this. So his stuff is breaking it down kind of like law school. You have a fact pattern and it's all this. And because he doesn't really practice law anymore. And I could kind of tell that. And even with Barnes and a few of these other ones, these, yeah, JC, which is that the way that it's easy to be like Jim Cramer on a new, talk about financial stuff and make predictions because it's just all online, right? They don't have to go in there and talk to it as if it's their client and you worry about the outcomes. And that's much different because I talked about this all the time. It's about expectations and whatnot. I think though, as far as the gossip stuff goes, that it started right around the depth, exactly the same time. He started to do trips. He started to do trips with his wife. He's doing a Rumble thing, and he's get together, and he's partying with this guy. He's partying with that guy. And what you're doing is you're the life of the party. Your ego is now surmounting everybody else. You're the reason that everyone's there. Sure, wife and I. Hey, it's protected ground. It's my wife and I doing coke together. But they brought that home. And that is the problem, and it's extreme problems that led to that. So.
Leave the party at the party. That is the way that I have always.
They brought the party people in. They're trying to have this.
That's the insanity of it, and you've got this Imholt stuff, and goddamn, man, that the guy that's with that girl, he fucking stuck his foot like in his mouth, down his throat, back out his ass. Guy is fucking, yeah, that dude should just shut up and disappear for a while, man.
I know.
I feel bad for this. Yeah, I didn't either. And then I went on his timeline and it's like, oh, he's just like, dude, you gotta stop. You just step away from the keyboard, man. Haven't you seen this shit like happen to enough people?
But I'll just tell you, from what I do, family law. I mean, I've made comments to clients before, like I'm not a counselor. I mean, they call me counselor, like attorney, but I'm not your person that you're gonna go sit on a couch and I'm too expensive, and I'm not that very friendly in a way for that. But sometimes it's just vent because they hate this person. And they're just going on and on and on. And I'm just like, okay, I'm racking up the bill, billing you for reading this, but it doesn't mean anything. But that's reminding me what it is. He's going through a divorce with this chick. He's obviously not happy about maybe his life decisions. They had kids too. And so, maybe, he was able to pull himself out of the muck, and but he also wants to burn her in the process. Perfectly fine. But it's
gonna make for some fun. It's gonna make for some fun court documents. I think you're gonna make out like a bandit through the whole thing.
Okay. Well, my viewers have definitely increased over this, so I'll say that.
Yeah, it's been great. No, I've been watching the stuff, and I've been very happy to see you getting a good view counts and stuff. And it seems like chats are active and everything. That's always the good outcome. That's how I felt doing the Eric July stuff. Because I started covering all that Eric July stuff. I was getting like 300, 400 live viewers. I'm like, Jesus. By
the way, that was when he had Eric July on. There was Dick Masterson in July, and then he brought him on. And that was the last thing I watched of him, which I enjoyed, by the way. He kind of turned me on the Eric July, how he worked them over. And I was like, that was really well done, and not in a bad way. And Eric just didn't come across good at all. And I think you and I had even talked about that. But then there was I think he was on with Dick Masterson, and I didn't feel like that one was as good because he was more, I'm not necessarily a fan of his either, but he was more friendly, and he didn't do the same thing that he did to July. And then he started to just, anyway, I just
some backstory there. Some backstory there that is important is that Rekida's channel came into existence in a big part because of Dick. He was covering a thing called the Lowell suit, which was a lawsuit between the co-host of Dick Masterson's old show and Dick Masterson. It was called the $6 million lawsuit or the $10 million lawsuit or something. They tried to sue him for the ownership of the show. Biggest problem in the universe was back in the day, was like one of the early like internet podcasts. It was like the E-Bombs World era kind of like shows. And he used to have a different co-host than Vito. And then at episode 108, that guy fell off, tried to take ownership of the iTunes feed and stuff. And it became this big legal battle, which Dick ended up winning. But during the process of that happening, Nick started covering it on Facebook. and then eventually started covering it on YouTube. And so that's how his channel sort of started in the first place, was covering the lol suit. And so he's known Dick for a very long time. I've been watching Dick stuff. I mean, I have his book back here, Men Are Better Than Women. Yeah, he has a book called Men Are Better Than Women, and it's fucking hilarious. You would love this book. I swear you would. It's your kind of book. It's hilarious. It's literally just a book about stats about women versus men, and it's the whole book.
Why would I need to read that?
Well, now that the internet exists, but this came out a long time ago. But anyway, I used to watch his show when it was the old co-host, and then I sort of carried over to the new stuff. So I've been watching him for a while. So I'm not, I definitely am more of a fan of Dick, I'd say, even than Nick. I knew of Dick Masterson before him. But I think Dick, through this whole thing, is like, he's never going to say out loud that like anything bad about Nick. In the same way, I don't think Nick would out loud start saying bad shit about him. It's sort of a vice versa thing where they've just been through a lot stuff.
I don't have a problem with that. And by the way, this kicked off for me, and I probably wouldn't have even done any shows on it. But it just one Friday night, I'm going to my son's high school graduation, and I see Joe Neerman, who I do like.
Good Logic.
And he's like, hey, Nick, you did this for me, and you made my show this, and you were there, da-da-da-da. And it just bothered me for some reason. I'm just like, I don't know what it was at work that day and dealing with...
No, I saw it.
Seeing the kids, and I was just like, hey, what about the kids? And then I'm like, oh, but hey, you helped me with my stream. And then, so I did this thing off that. And, he came back at me and he's whatever. And it's perfectly fine. That's why I was doing some stuff. And if you're friends like Dick Masterson and you want to defend your guy, I don't have a problem with that. I don't even have a problem with some of these LawTube ones, but then they want to do the legal analysis of this. And when you start to do that,
right,
you have to start talking about the kids and you have to start talking about endangerment. And then you at some point you just say, you know what? Some adults are just shit. And until he gets his act together, I don't give a shit about them. I'm going to worry about these 5 kids. And it's not a problem to say that's your concern. I mean, how is that?
Right.
When you were growing up, if someone's like, oh, you know what? We don't want to hurt mom's feelings. So we're going to just leave the kids in I don't know exactly your situation, but be worried about mom. It's like, fuck her. I'm sorry, if she got a, mental health, but the adults, you just say, fuck you. The kids didn't ask for this. They don't deserve this. Let's worry about them and stop going, oh, I hope Nick's doing fine. God damn. He's a grown adult, a law license, YouTube channel, and he chose to do this. So I don't have any sympathy. Right. So anyway, that's.
I think I do agree. I do agree that that like Joe's whole thing. I saw his sort of spat about it. I think he was off there. I think Dick is sort of different just because he doesn't like from the legal side of things. He's a guy who's like, yeah, do all the coke you want. He doesn't like. Right. He's like, I don't care about that stuff, and like. I think he himself is kind of a go out and party kind of guy. So he's not like,
does he have kids?
But no. And then that's the big difference, I think. And I think Dick is also somebody who said, I know I heard him on one of the shows talk about it, but he said like, I don't like the kid shit, like, but I think his state.
That's the only shit. Like I said, the guns I don't care about, the drugs I don't care about, except for the fact that you've got like a 4 to 16-year-olds running around and you're doing this. Let me ask you this, because this is a question I kind of had to myself, which is your 16-year-old, I think it's a boy. As a father, let's say you finding out that your parent as a 16-year-old is degenerate, has like polyamorous relationships, doing massive drugs in there, and you're kind of seeing your dad spiral. I mean, to me as a dad, I would just be utterly embarrassed. I would be so embarrassed if my 16-year-old son saw me doing that kind of stuff and you kind of come out of it. I mean, as a kid, if you saw your parents doing that, because you don't have kids yourself, but that's got to affect how you think about your parent, right?
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I had plenty of things I saw as a kid that affected the way that I looked at my parents, certainly, and some of the decisions they made. I mean, I think I think that's bound to happen. And I think that, unfortunately with this situation, this is why I give a shit about it from the point of view of the kids and not really much else, is sort of that perspective. It's like, well, the only person you're really going to negatively affect long term with this that isn't fixable is the kids.
Yep.
So that's what you have to sort of solve and figure out that equation first. I do want to talk about something else, because this sort of went on, and it involves some legal stuff, although it's fuzzy, and I'm not going to bring up docs and all that because I did accumulate some of it, but I can explain most of it. Basically, young Klippa, who is been in the chat many a times in this show and had popped on Twitter stuff with me and things. I've been on his show a few times. Has been arrested in Texas after filming outside of a Eric July event. He was charged there, I believe, with harassment. But what the real thing was is he had a warrant, which he didn't know about, from what I understand, that was revolving around the previous interaction, and you will know this interaction, from months ago, when he went and pinned those $20 bills to Eric's warehouse. So what this has now blown open is that Eric not only made a report to the cops about the pinning the money to the warehouse, but whatever he told the cops was enough to get them to charge him with stalking. So there is now a stalking charge on Riley out of Texas, and I'm assuming now him and Eric will both have to go to court regarding it, because I imagine Eric will have to send like some form of statements and stuff in, which is going to be interesting. The entire thing is fucking wild, because I don't like, and I've been sort of looking over past stuff for the past like day now to try to figure out like legally like what all was done here and what all could be actually criminal, and like what is, reading through Texas law shit and like trespassing and what counts as this and that. And I don't see how the fuck you can charge somebody with stalking for pinning money to a warehouse that said something on Twitter, because there aren't any statements on Twitter that relate to, like, I mean, I guess you could say there's these statements where he's like, I'm going to shave you, but like, that's going to be kind of hard to call not comedy in court. Like, because the guy's whole shtick is that he's making jokes. So it's
this
weird.
This is where I flip back to the hardcore ANCAP in a sense. And by the way, I'm probably more would side with Eric July than the other. I'm just not a bigger fan of that, and because I think some of it.
No, right.
Well, it doesn't matter. You could break this down, because I don't care either way, really. And it doesn't matter what side you are to look at it. This is. Remember the guy that did a meme before the election saying, hey, vote on Monday or Wednesday or whatever, and he got arrested for this. So you can say jokes, and then people get arrested for stupid shit and they get charged for this. Now, this guy, so the previous warrant, now I would, if I had done this thing, I would be looking on the website or calling or finding out if there was any charges with me going on with the DA in that area, and then I wouldn't step foot in that area until I figured out it was clean and fine. So he comes back. The problem with him now, that you get this with domestic violence restraining orders, which is what I deal with. It's very easy to get. This is criminal, so it's a little different standard, but let me just walk through this. Mom hates dad, so she doesn't want him to have the kids, so she files a restraining order against him. It could be very easy. It could be just disturbing her peace or beating the shit out of her, whatever. But it's real easy. So the cops do it. They are the family law judge gets it, and you have a trial, and it's easy. And there's a restraining order against him. Now, between the time that it's served on him and the time they have trial can be 6 months or so. In the meantime, this jackass is violating the restraining order over and over and over. That's a problem. And now when you go to trial, you're only really talking about the fact that he's violated this restraining order over and over, rather than the reason why it was bunk in the first place. That's what you might have here, which is you had a stalking charge. We had a warrant. Now you're back at this guy's event. You're telling me you're not stalking him? that is going to be a difficult hurdle
Right.
to now get over for the fact that we're stalking and you're still there. You're still there doing something, even if it's on public property. Anyway, so that's a problem
Right.
he may have legally, hoops to get through. I think it's stupid. I think Eric July is a bit of a pussy on this, but when you do own a business and people are trying to harass you, or you think that they are, you do want to kind of protect it. And it's just like, quit fucking trolling me. I'm trying to run a business here. I get that part as well. But you know what? If you didn't poke this bear so much, maybe they wouldn't keep trying to eat your food. I don't know.
Yeah, I do think Eric is going to continue to just get shit on the internet by a portion, because I think he has. And I'll say this as somebody who is a fan of him. I mean, before all of this shit, as just his ANCAP libertarian stuff that he'd put out there, he has sort of, in the way of handling this, has kind of gone against a lot of that stuff that he used to say.
Yep. Yeah.
And this is a guy that went on Twitter, and I have the video somewhere because I was going to use it for an edit, but who went on Twitter basically saying, pull up, come to my events, come to my stuff, come have a problem with me. And then it's like, I call cops and say a guy's stalking me. It's like, yeah, that's kind of amusing as an outside, as an outside perspective on it. I'm like, that entire thing does make you kind of look like a bitch, but it's going to be interesting to see how Riley deals with it in court. I imagine there's going to be court over it and all that kind of shit, and it'll produce more files to go.
It really is up to the DA whether they want to bring charges. People are like, I'm going to press charges. Okay, that's not a thing. What you can do is bother the DA until they actually do something about it, and then the DA's got to make sure that you said, Eric, is he going to go to court of this? Well, if the DA wants to go through with this, you're going to need to maybe Eric, if he had anything to do with this. Or maybe it's the bodyguards, whoever had personal knowledge and did, saw these things. So they might have to have him be a witness. If I was Eric, maybe you just go, I'm not going to testify. You're going to have to force me to do it. And then hold some libertarian values. Come on, Eric.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is funny for me, because it's just like, I don't know. When I was coming up on the internet, people going to people's events to troll them and stuff like that was sort of common. That kind of went on all the time. And so seeing it progress into where people are getting charged with fucking stalking stuff, I'm like, this is we're in a different era of the internet now, where I feel because I've seen this happen recently. There was another person I think got hit with charges for going to somebody's event. The most famous one is the Hassel and Boogie shooting that 357 Magnum up in the air.
I don't know about that one.
Oh, there's Frank Hassel and Boogie got this big guy on the internet who's absolute tard, but still, they got this big argument, and Frank Hassel's this pretty famous internet troll, like a Sam Hyde figure. And so they start going back and forth, and Boogie's like, come to my house, gives the guy his address and shit. And so the guy does exactly that. He just shows up and goes to the guy's house. And Boogie, in his, genius, goes outside the house with a revolver that he didn't even own and shoots it in the air in the direction of a school and church. And immediately got charged with negligent fire of a firearm and endangerment and all these different things. Because the guy wasn't even in his property, really. He was walking up to his front door, and it's oh, you're an idiot. You're. And so he faced real charges, and was in court for a while.
Even if it's in the air. I mean, that's just idiotic. Back in, I want to say 2000, we moved to California from Colorado. And I was still full of piss and vinegar, and I would have road rage with people at times. And this one guy, he wanted to come in. It was traffic. I didn't let him in, whatever. And he starts giving me the bird, and I'm like, yeah, fuck you. And then as wanting happens, he's coming up next to me, and he's still doing this. I'm like, let's pull over. I'd done that before. People don't pull over, so you call their bluff. And this guy called, and so I'm like, pull over. So he pulls over, and then I pull over, and I'm like, oh shit. And so I get out of my car. He gets out of his car, and he's walking towards me, and he got a holster and a weapon. And I'm like, I'm out. he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, he had like a Brinks shirt on. So he did like security. And I'm like, you've got a gun. I'm totally out. And he's, calling me names. But I got in my car and left. And I realized at that point, I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you? This is over just some guy wanting to get in your lane and you're going to show him a big time. It's like, you have kids. You don't need to be texting or DMing someone, hey, come to my house either, and shooting your weapon in the air. You got to grow up a little bit, or doing coke in your car. I'm just saying.
Yes. Tell Tyler to talk about me in Nashville, how handsome I am. I saw the photo, that's real. They were in Nashville together.
Yeah, we met Andy. It was great. He was a good guy. So
I still haven't met him. I need to see him at some point in an event, or get him to go to some place I'm going to be at. It's kind of hard being in Alaska to get around to meet everybody.
I'll tell you this. Andy did one thing. My son loves guitars. He's 17. He plays, guitar and stuff. So he loves Nashville for, that's where we're going. And he's like, he wanted to go to Gibson to see their stuff. And Andy's like, hey, I have this friend, whatever. So we ended up going down there, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but he had a Les Paul collection. He had been friends with Les Paul, and he had like 250, guitars of him. And then he did this talk, and then he said, come up and play. So my son got to go play these Les Paul Gibsons that were not mass produced. They were like just stupid shit he was randomly putting together. And it was amazing. And, Andy kind of got us to do that. And then Andy showed up there as well. So cool situation. Awesome. If you've liked that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. Always love to see stuff like that. Yeah, that's been I've been just sort of, getting back into sort of all the drama going on. So like the Rekieta stuff, I picked up all of that and started reading through the court docs and everything I could find. And then I started reading through the Clippa stuff and all that, and watching all the streams and getting back up into gear on that. And it's been sort of hard to do everything while also juggling campaign stuff and all that. So I've got over the next...
Your radio interview the other day. Good job. Yeah.
The one with Michael Dukes. I was on his show. That was a good one. I did Homer is like a town near me. They had me on the radio too, and that one was a little more awkward because it was over on the phone, and something about not having something to like bounce off of really fucks with me. Have you been
on someone's stream before and they have, like your cam is like this?
Right. Yes.
Which isn't so bad, but I've done, I don't know. Did you do Josh Smith's show? I know he would do this where then when you're doing your part, it's just you. He like moves his so you can't see his reaction. I don't like that. I like to be able to see the reaction of the party, because sometimes it's like, oh, okay, maybe you're not good. Maybe you are good. Maybe you have indigestion. I don't know.
Yeah, because I also will often cue when I stop a sentence or start a new sentence off of the reaction somebody's having. So it makes me feel like I trip over my words more. It's like, I need consistency, damn it.
But I'll say this, just to, I know Andy wants us to get back to talking about Rekieta and Clippa, but you did it. I think that was probably a conservative, or at least right.
Yes,
right,
more right.
Right,
yeah.
And you did a great job of saying how you would be better than the Republican and better than the Democrat. And you reminded me of the Scott Horton thing. I'm arguing, from the right, and the arguing the left from the left. And I thought it was a really good job. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I tried to be a little more prepared for that one than most. So I'm going to try to do that with the rest of the interviews I get going forward.
How well prepared are you? Because he was going to try to push you on specifics about cutting and budget, and you did a good job of not really answering.
Yeah, so there are a few things that I had prepared, but I wasn't going to go into them as in depth as I needed to. I knew I had time constraints. So what I'm kind of looking at doing is over the next couple days, I'm going to be sort of boiling that into sort of something shorter that I can sort of grab at. The primary things I think that need cuts here it's mostly land management, because I think it has to be done privately. But it's hard to explain the different types of land management here because Alaska has so much of it. And it's like, that is a big spending a big portion of spending here that no one really takes notice of. And I think there's a ton of other spots, but I have like 5 or 6 of them that I've written down. And now that I am going to be going back on his show too, so I will get sort of a second stab at it, which will be good. And I think he's going to have me on to talk more about the Vogler thing too, which will be interesting.
There you go. That is your wheelhouse.
Yeah. So the Mercatus stuff I think is pretty simple. He's going to be in a fucked up court case. The kids are not with him from my understanding right now. They're probably with one of the family members, or they're with some kind of protective temporary family. I don't know what the word they use for it anymore is. Over here it was something I can't remember, but yeah, basically temporary family until they find
placement. I hope he gets his shit together. It was interesting. He did the cash bond. So he didn't, they have an or provisions there where if you do a cash bond or you don't, and then you're released on your own recognizance, but with all these provisions like drug testing, Well, he did the cash bond. So he didn't have to worry about all that. Whereas wife, he didn't do that for her. So she's under all these provisions. Maybe she was going to be worse off than him, or him worse off than her. So he needs to come down a little bit. I don't know. It's interesting. We'll see what happens though. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, it seems to me like the structure of the legal system over there will sort of shake it out, because the way that I see everything sort of coming down is like what'll end up happening is some of those charges he's facing will get dropped to lesser charges and stuff like that if he takes a deal. But the problem is that he's got all these fucking lawyers and people who don't practice, who don't understand how this system works, who are telling him, no, you can get off this and get that. And it's like, no, man, you gotta like really think about, like, you fucked up, you fucked up. So you gotta look at the chips on the table, and really, if you're gonna go to trial on something like this, if there is a deal offered, you gotta really be thinking about whether or not you take whatever offer they put on the table.
Well, and part of this has to be your personal situation. Your situation, as an example, with the charge you had was, I'm single, Leighton. What happens to me? Okay, I'm going to take a chance. I think I got a good chance of winning this. Your circumstances are a little bit different. And if that happens, worst case, okay, maybe I do a little time. Okay. Well, he's got a wife and 5 kids. You can't
it's
take
a bit
risks.
different.
You suddenly have to start thinking about like the worst case scenario, that if it doesn't go your way and they have a stronger case against you, how this is going to stack up. What can I do so that me or my wife are not both in jail, and that we can be there to try to help raise these kids? It actually just turned my stomach thinking about that, and I'm like, that's got to be a concern. And you got Robert Barnes out there saying, oh, the warrant wasn't valid and all this stuff. And I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah, and I think him and Viva and some of them, their tactics on the internet, I'm not a fan of at all. I've seen the way they've handled themselves have been very dirty, we'll say.
And what brought it to light was like when Israel happened, and then the way they kind of grift and stuff, and I'm just like, oh, you guys are both pieces of shit. I noticed that.
Well, and it's funny because you mentioned it, I believe, on one of your streams, but you mentioned they had like Scott Horton on, they've had Dave Smith on, they've had like 3 or 4 other people in the like space on, and then like a couple weeks later they'll be on Twitter with that person talking shit. And it's like, oh, you guys are just like, you're just clout goblins. Like you're just out for attention.
When they were on your show, and now you're going to go act like that isn't right. What is that?
Yeah, and as far as I'm not going to respond to those first 2 parts on the internet at all. That's insanity. Don't do that. But the can we get a passionate campaign speech? I could read my letter to the editor. That's actually one of the things I used to get a lot of the conservative people interested, because I thought that was well written. But maybe I'll put that at the end here.
The guy that interviewed you, he had a good question for you, which was, do you really think you have a chance at winning, or are you just kind of being a disruptor? And I thought you had a good answer, which is, yeah, I think I could. I mean, it's not like you're running for the LP presidency, which they're not going to.
Right.
So you actually
when you
have a
break
shot.
down the percentages, there's actually basically it's about carving out a margin, because there's already been a Democrat who ran against her and he got like 35%, and a Republican who ran against her and he got a better percentage. He got closer to like 40%. And so the point there is like, all I'm really trying to do is get 10 or 15% of her voting base, which are mostly old school Republicans, to come over to my side of things. And I do think that's possible. Like, it's actually like, it's doable if I can get in enough people's ears.
And by the way, when you start getting those votes, what you end up doing is exactly what the libertarians kind of should be doing anyway, which is moving the goalposts. Maybe she does have some second thoughts about some things, right? And what you're also doing is, I thought this is what was good about it, was you're putting out in the mainstream a better face of libertarianism than what we have like on the national stage, which is, you were I'm sorry to fanboy, but I was really impressed, Leighton, and you were very good about, like, specifically, obviously you're running for a very local office, but it was, here's what I'm doing, and it was all Alaska centric and kind of prying away from the federal side. So I thought you did a really good job of that. Yeah.
No, I try to keep it to this sort of stuff, and there were some questions in there. He asked about sort of how I got to libertarianism and stuff, and it's like, so I gave that sort of rundown.
Yeah.
But I thought that went well too, because I try to keep away from being too autistic when I describe all that stuff.
I think Andy makes a good point. You need to bring a chainsaw to some of your events.
I have a chainsaw. I mean, I have a fucking.
Of course you do.
I have a 1940 so I have a K motor behind me that's from the 1940s, like in my studio. People just don't see it because it's like hidden, but it's what holds up the.
Go cut some blocks of
stuff.
ice and.
Yeah. Oh Jesus fucking Christ! I have an ice auger somewhere in storage.
Of course you do.
Well, you've got to do if you do ice fishing, use those ice augers. That's how you do that. Yeah, so this was a letter to the editor that I wrote, and I'll put this up on screen, and I can read it, I guess, I suppose. But it's this was the letter I wrote a while back. I think I put it up on Twitter at some point, but I will read through that. What are the age demographics of the voters near you? How can you best motivate them? So yeah, there's about a little over 50% of the voting populace are going to be 50 and above. And so that's sort of why I'm leaning, and that's why they lean more towards the right as well. But a lot of that has to do with my district being an area that isn't really full of jobs. So you don't have a ton of young people down here because there's not as much of the, like, a lot of the work that's here is labor work, which typically is higher paying and being done by people in their 30s or 40s, not in their 20s necessarily. We do have a decent population of like the 20 to 30-year-old demo. That makes up a good portion of the population. I put this out a little while ago. So, Alaska's politics stand among a myriad of distractions. Many can enumerate a lengthy list of issues confronting both Alaska and its residents. However, beneath the surface, these challenges are mere symptoms of larger systemic problems rooted in the federal and state governments. Alaska's state government appears feeble, populated by individuals lacking strength on both ends of the political spectrum. Since statehood, they've been dictated to by the federal government, receiving directives on what to do and when to do it. The federal government's extensive ownership of Alaska's land translates into control over the state government. This control permits only actions aligned with the federal interests, disregarding the best outcomes for the people, the market, or the environment. While some argue that electing the right politicians or appointing the right judges could resolve Alaska's issue, the state grapples not only with political challenges, but also with cultural ones that have been largely overlooked. Imagine for a moment a colossal mountain, symbolizing a culture of individual liberty. Before the first miners arrived in Alaska, this mountain stood untouched, serene and beautiful, defending natural rights against any intrusion. However, the influx of money from miners invited the government, which in its usual fashion chipped away at the mountain until all that remained were people at the bottom in shackles and scattered rubble. This is the reality of Alaska. We got here not only by allowing bureaucracy to take hold through statehood and beyond, but by losing our culture of individual liberty. If Alaskans want to make Alaska better, we are going to need to identify the people willing to put party affiliation aside to take back Alaska from the federal government, close the warehouse we have become, and reopen under new management of individuals who call Alaska home, people willing to construct a mountain. Above all, a resurgence of robust culture of individual liberty is imperative for Alaska's future. Without it, we are destined for failure.
There you go.
Little wordy, but it was a letter to the editor, so they always kind of are. You have to make it a little flowery.
You got published there. You know, you used that. You wrote it. You spent time. You did a good job. And then it's nice. And then when you do get that website, you post it up there as state.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I've got a website. Should be finished here in the next few days. I'm getting that sort of worked out now. Right, I'm doing everything myself, so it does make it all a little tricky. And the main thing is I want to be able to get campaign donations. And being able to get campaign donations requires me to open up a whole other separate bank account and all that stuff. And so that's what I went to do today, and I set an appointment for tomorrow. So I should have the new bank account tomorrow, which can then be added to the website, which can then make it so that I can actually get donations, which would be nice, because I have to fly to Kodiak and Cordova, and that shit is not cheap.
Is there any are there websites out there that try to help you navigate these FEC or FCC, whatever laws it is for, I guess it's FEC laws, or local laws for any of this, or do you just kind of have to dig in and fly blind? I've never checked it out.
Some of it I either know from past experience from doing a city council race, and when I did that, I just kind of read it all online and sort of read all the requirements. So this time around, the main thing is APOC, which is like the state, and you have to report basically your expenditures and the money you get donated to them. Everybody who donates, you have to report basically a bunch of info about them. So it's like where they live, their phone number, their email address, and like some other info the state wants you to collect. And if you don't collect that, then it's invalid. So what typically people will do is if you're doing like a cash donation, you fill out this big piece of paper. So what you do if you're doing internet donations is there's services typically you can do it through the LP. They used to, with the CRM, be able to set this up for candidates. But I haven't found anybody at the LP who's going to help me. And I haven't found anybody with anybody else who's going to really help me put stuff together. So I've been sort of just having to do it all myself. But I'm probably going to use something called Campaign Partner, which is a service a buddy of mine used for his campaign. And they basically just handle the website part of it, and then they give you the donation buttons and everything, and they make a that has all the information you need for your specific state. So you can't donate on the website without giving that information, because it's a requirement. But I think I'm allowed to take donations from anywhere, so there's no restrictions on that. It's just restrictions on you got to get the info.
Right. And Andy, and
then
you can donate money, but you just might not be able to vote. Mm-hmm. Might.
Yes, I'm also gonna. Yeah, the main thing is when I go back on radio and stuff like that, I can be giving out my website, which is will be the primary goal to get people over there to throw a couple bucks at it. Really, I mean if I fly a couple times to Kodiak and I fly a couple times to Cordova to campaign, I really only need to raise $1,500, a couple grand. So it's not that bad. And then signage and stuff like that, but I can pay for that out of state if I really need to, or out of pocket. CLC type said that if a state doesn't endorse Chase, the LP shouldn't give their state any help. It seems like they already don't do that. Yeah, well, that's sort of funny in my position. No, I'm not really getting any help on this with National, at least not yet. And as far as the Chase stuff goes, My state, we're going to back him as a candidate. We back Joe as a candidate. We kind of back every libertarian as a candidate. I don't think he's going to perform all that well. I've said that sort of personally. That's just my opinion. Like on a personal level, I don't think he's going to do well. Jorgensen only got 2.5% in Alaska. So I suggest he'll probably do around those same numbers. But we'll see. And as far as other affiliates doing it, I'm staying out of that drama. I don't want to throw anything back and forth there. I think if you're in a state who does that, the board did that, it's between them and national. Let them flesh it out, man. I don't want to get involved.
I'll have to have you on. Zach Kincaid, I don't know if you know who he is. He's a California delegate. I get some feedback there. Is that me or you?
It's probably me. I'll mute when you're talking. It's my fault.
I'm sorry. If you mute, then you're not going to be able to hear me. He wants to do a breakdown of the LP convention, so maybe you come on there as well. We can talk about that stuff.
Yeah, I could do that. I was a delegate, so I was there voting on everything, and I was present for all the speeches and all the stuff. I was third row for Trump speaking, so I was like right there for that, and I saw the RFK stuff and all of it. So I'm definitely can go on and talk about that. Yeah, okay. Well, let's end it out here. You said you had about an hour, so I think we're right about there. So perfect. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Go check out Libertarian Podcast Review, Tyler, over on YouTube, and follow him on Twitter, X, I guess now. And check out Tower Gang, because he produces over there for Tower Gang. Always a fun time. Yep. Peace.
You did the plugs for me. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. If you got anything else, go ahead.
No, that's it.
All right. Well, we'll catch you guys the next one. Take it easy, JC. Take it easy, Andy. Peace.
Thanks.